Part 1. The Forbidden Whisper, a prison not meant for man. What would you do if I told you that beneath the holiest city on earth, beyond marble floors worn smooth by centuries of prayer, there lies a prison not built for men, but for beings who once stood in the radiance of the Creator himself? Would you dare imagine corridors carved not from stone, but from the weight of unspoken confessions? Would you dare descend into chambers where silence is older than time itself, and every breath feels like trespassing upon the divine? They say this place is hidden beneath the Vatican, deeper than the oldest catacombs, past tunnels where the bones of saints rest in quiet reverence, past crypts where popes are entombed in marble and gold, far below the prayers of the living, where the light of God itself dares not reach. The walls here do not echo with chants, but with a low hum, a resonance older than language, older than scripture, even older than the fall itself. And within those walls, waiting, are the forgotten ones. Not demons, not mortals, but angels, cast down not for rebellion alone, but for something far more dangerous, compassion. They once believed they could save mankind from suffering, from war, from death itself. But in saving us, they stripped us of what made us human, our struggle, our choice, our need to rise from the ashes. Heaven called it heresy, hell called it treason, and so they were neither blessed nor damned, only forgotten. This is the story no gospel dares whisper, the secret the Vatican guards at all costs. For these angels are not bound by chains, they are bound by their own vow. A vow older than the church, older than the cross itself. And tonight, for the first time in centuries, someone new will descend those forbidden stairs to meet them.
Part 2. The Descent into the hollow of heaven's exiles. The elevator groaned as it began its descent, a slow, mechanical hymn echoing through the narrow shaft. I counted the seconds between each flicker of the dim light overhead, but lost track somewhere past 50. The air grew colder, heavier, as if every layer of stone we passed stripped me further from the world above. Beside me stood Cardinal Armand, a man whose very silence carried weight. His crimson robes, muted in the half-light, looked less like vestments of faith and more like the garb of a judge. In his right hand, a weathered leather case, its brass clasps dulled with age, but still gleaming faintly, as though it held something more sacred or more dangerous than Scripture itself. I asked no questions, for his eyes, fixed on the descending numbers, were not eyes that welcomed conversation. Only once did he speak, his voice low, deliberate, a confession disguised as a warning. He said, "The last warden, he didn't last long." I swallowed. What happened to him? A pause, a faint smile that held no warmth. Early retirement. The silence that followed pressed harder than the walls around us. When at last the elevator shuddered to a halt, the doors parted with a hiss of sterilized air. What lay before me was no prison, no dripping stone walls or rusted iron bars. It was something worse. A curved corridor stretched ahead, lit by pale blue light. Glass panels lined the walls, glowing faintly with symbols I didn't recognize. Numbers and heartbeats flickered across monitors, readouts of temperature, rhythm, things I could not name. This was not a prison. This was a sanctum of observation, a laboratory carved into holy ground. Waiting at the threshold stood a figure in white, thin, pale from years without sunlight, his lab coat immaculate yet fraying at the cuffs. He extended a steady hand. "Dr. Elias," he said, voice calm, but threaded with something unspoken. Before I could respond, Cardinal Armand gestured curtly. "Show him the observation deck." We walked, and with every door we passed, the air thickened. Behind the glass, rooms lay silent, some empty, white walls sterile as confessionals, others not empty. In one, faint movement, a woman tracing lines across the floor with her fingertip, equations, symbols older than Euclid, yet somehow familiar. "She's been here since the day this place was built," Elias whispered. "We call her Nemeris. Every hour she draws something new. Some of her formulas have solved problems that scholars struggled with for centuries, but she never explains them." I couldn't look away. Her motions were deliberate, almost prayerful. "Has anyone tried to speak with her?" I asked. He hesitated. "The last warden did, and by the end, he swore they were sharing memories." His gaze darkened. "The Vatican considered that dangerous." Further down, another cell. A man folding paper, delicate stars, each perfectly symmetrical. 6 points, each fold precise. A quiet ritual repeated endlessly. "They vanish at midnight," Elias murmured. "No matter where we keep them, every single one, gone." The man looked up then. His dark eyes met mine through the glass. And for a heartbeat, I felt watched in return. I whispered, "They know." Elias nodded gravely. "Always."
Part 3. The Watchers, Faces Behind the Glass. We turned a corner. The corridor widened into a crescent, lined with reinforced glass that reflected the pale glow of unseen monitors. It was here that I first saw them. Not names on parchment, not myths whispered from pulpits, but faces, real, breathing, silent. The first cell held a boy. At least, he looked like a boy. Knees drawn to his chest, a book hovered before him, pages fluttering in wind that did not exist. He did not turn when we approached. His eyes remained fixed on the text, ancient script I could not read, symbols curling like vines across parchment older than memory. "That's Gabriel," Elias murmured. "He hasn't moved in years. Reads the same page, again and again." "Why?" I asked. Elias's lips tightened. He says it reminds him why they fell. 2 cells down, I saw her. The woman with closed eyes, motionless. Her hair spilled like ink over her shoulders, her face serene, too serene, like a statue carved by hands that had seen heaven. "She hasn't opened her eyes since she arrived," Elias said softly. "Not once, not even to eat." "Is she alive?" I whispered. He hesitated. "We think so. Her vitals remain steady." But his voice dropped lower. "Every warden reports the same thing. When you stand near her cell, you feel seen." The next figure startled me. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, standing perfectly still in the center of his room. Not sitting, not moving, just standing. "Uriel," Elias said. "He hasn't spoken in decades, but every guard swears he whispers to them in dreams." I forced myself to meet his gaze, cold, steady, like staring into the heart of a storm held at bay. "Are they dangerous?" I asked finally. Elias didn't answer. Instead, he opened a metal folder, revealing photographs, reports, handwritten notes yellowed with age. "Dangerous," he repeated. "There's something worse. Unknowable." At the end of the hall, we reached the observation deck, a vast chamber, glass-lined and silent, granting a panoramic view of every cell at once. From here, I could see them all. Nemeris tracing endless equations, Brenek folding fragile stars, Gabriel with his floating book, Uriel frozen in stillness, the woman who never opened her eyes, and one more, Raphael. He sat alone, hands resting on his knees, eyes calm, too calm. The moment I looked at him, a vibration stirred in my chest, soft at first, barely a hum, but then a melody, low, resonant, woven of harmonies older than language. The sounds seemed to seep through the glass, through the walls, through my very bones. It was not music. It was memory. And as it grew,
One by one, the others reacted. Nemeris stopped drawing. Bernick froze mid-fold. Gabriel closed his book. Even the woman with closed eyes stirred, her lips parting as if to breathe the sound in. Every day, Elias whispered. Same hour, same song. We don't know what it means. But I did. Even then, though I couldn't explain it, I knew. This wasn't a warning. It was a call.
Part 4. The Journal. Whispers of the Fallen. That night I could not sleep. The hum of Raphael's melody lingered long after I left the observation deck, vibrating faintly in my chest like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Every corridor seemed to echo with it. Every shadow felt alive with unseen eyes. In my office, a windowless cell lined with steel cabinets and forgotten files, I found it. A journal, thin, weathered, tucked into the lowest drawer, hidden beneath decades of incident reports and Vatican seals. The leather was cracked, its pages yellowed, edges frayed by restless hands. Scrawled across the first page, in hurried script barely legible, "We are not what you think." I turned the pages slowly. Sparse notes, disjointed entries, fragments of a mind unraveling under truths too vast to bear. Nemeris stopped drawing equations. She drew a map. Brannock's stars changed shape tonight. 6 points became 7. The humming, it's spreading. Not sound, not vibration, something else. And then, a single line etched so deep into the paper it nearly tore through. "I don't think they're prisoners." I stared at those words until my vision blurred. Something about them felt inevitable, as if I had known it all along. The next morning, I requested direct interviews. Dr. Elias hesitated, his eyes dark with the weight of unspoken warnings. He said, "Extended interaction is discouraged. The last warden. I've read his notes. I need answers." Elias studied me for a long moment, as though weighing whether I was ready or already lost. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, but remember this. They do not lie, but they will not tell you the truth you expect." The first I called for was Nemeris. The guards brought her in silently. No struggle, no protest. She moved with quiet grace, bare feet brushing against the sterile floor, dark hair trailing like spilled ink. She sat across from me at the bolted table, her eyes sharp but unreadable, like staring into the night sky and realizing it was staring back. "Thank you for speaking with me," I began. "I've been waiting," she replied softly. Her voice, low, melodic, carried a weight that silenced the room. "For what?" I asked. Her head tilted slightly, a faint smile ghosting her lips. "That's not it." As the guards led her back to her cell, I remained seated, motionless. The hum of Raphael's melody still lingered faintly in the halls, threading through every heartbeat, binding every thought. I stared at the empty chair across from me and felt it, that subtle pull, the gravity of something vast and unseen drawing me deeper into truths I was not ready to face. In that silence, I realized the question was no longer what they were, but why they stayed, and why. A part of me feared the answer. Part 5. The Confession. Angels Who Fell for Love. The next day, I requested her presence again. Nemeris entered without chains, without fear. Bare feet whispering against the sterile floor, black hair trailing behind her like a veil of night. She sat, folding her hands in silence, a calm that was almost unbearable. I took a breath. "Why are you here?" The question trembled out of me, half demand, half prayer. Her eyes met mine, and in that instant, the room felt smaller, the walls closer, the air heavier, as though heaven itself leaned in to listen. "We are here," she said softly, "because we chose mercy when mercy was forbidden." Her words struck like scripture inverted.
I felt my chest tighten. "Mercy," I repeated. "You fell for showing mercy?" She nodded, slow, deliberate. "Long ago, we were sent to watch, to witness mankind's suffering without interference, to guard, but never touch." Her voice softened, breaking into something almost human. "But we could not stand idle. We wept as children starved. We mourned as mothers buried sons. We healed wounds we were forbidden to heal. We silenced storms, stayed plagues, lifted hands that were never meant to rise again." Her gaze drifted upward, as though seeing a memory beyond the ceiling. "At first, we believed it holy, to give humanity what it begged for, to spare them pain. But mercy without struggle stole something vital." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Her eyes returned to mine, ancient, aching. "When you take away suffering, you take away choice. And without choice, there is no growth, no courage, no meaning." The silence between us was heavy with things I could not name. She spoke again, softer still. "We did not fall for pride, as Lucifer did. We fell for love." I swallowed hard. "And heaven punished you for that?" "No," she whispered. "We punished ourselves." Her words left me hollow. For the first time since descending into this place, I understood the weight of what surrounded me. Not prisoners, not monsters, but guardians who chose exile so that we might learn to stand without them.
Part 6, The Song, Harmonies Older Than Heaven. That night, I dreamt of fire. Cities collapsing into oceans, children crying beneath skies split with lightning, hands of light reaching down, lifting them from ruin. And in every vision, I heard it, a song, low, unbroken, carried on a wind that did not belong to this world. When I woke, the melody was still there, not in my ears, in my bones. I followed it down the corridor, past the silent cells, past the watching eyes, until I stood before him, Raphael. He sat cross-legged on the floor of his cell, eyes closed, lips unmoving, yet the music filled the room. A resonance that wasn't sound, but memory, something older than language, older than grief. I whispered, "Raphael." His eyes opened, calm, ancient, a storm held in glass. "You hear it," he said. Not a question, a certainty. I nodded. "What is it?" I asked. "Why does it affect the others?" He tilted his head slightly, as if listening to a harmony beyond me. "It is not a song," he said softly. "It is a thread." A thread? A bond between us, between all that fell and all that waits to rise. His gaze pierced me. "When I hum, we remember who we are, why we wait, why we chose silence instead of war." I swallowed. "Why now? Why do I hear it?" His voice lowered, a confession wrapped in prophecy. "Because the waiting is ending. Because the question has been asked. Because humanity stands at the edge of choosing again." My chest tightened. What choice? He closed his eyes, resuming the hum, low, resonant, unshakable. And as the sound grew, the others stirred. Nemiris stopped drawing. Gabriel closed his book. Even Uriel, unmoving for decades, lifted his head toward the sound. In that moment, I understood. This song was not for them. It was for me. Part 7, The Judgment, When Faith Trembles. The Vatican convened at dawn, not in the grand halls above, where choirs sang and pilgrims prayed, but in the hollow silence of the chamber below, the place no scripture dared name. Cardinal Armand stood at the head of the table, his crimson robes heavy with authority, yet his face carved by sleepless nights. Around him, bishops and scholars whispered prayers that sounded less like devotion and more like fear. On the table lay my report, pages filled with truths no one wanted to speak aloud. That the beings in these cells were not prisoners, that they were not demons, that they stayed by choice, waiting, watching, testing us. "They are dangerous," a bishop hissed. "They defied heaven itself if we release them." I interrupted. "They were never bound, not by us, not by chains. They could leave at any time." The room fell silent. Cardinal Armand's gaze cut through the quiet. "Then why do they remain?" I hesitated. "Because humanity is not ready." A murmur rippled through the council. Fear, disbelief, anger. "They wait for us to learn," I said, my voice steady now, "to understand suffering, to accept freedom with its cost." I met Armand's eyes. They fell, not for pride, but for love, and they chose exile, because we begged for mercy we did not deserve. The silence that followed was heavier than any sermon. Finally, Armand spoke, a whisper sharp as a blade. "If what you say is true, then we must decide. Do we honor their choice, or do we bind them before they choose for us?" In that moment, I felt the hum again, faint. Raphael's song, threading through the air, binding every soul in that chamber. Even those who could not hear it shifted uneasily, as if some unseen presence stirred within their bones. I closed my eyes, and for the briefest instant, I saw it. A vision, not of war, but of balance. Humanity standing at the edge of a precipice. Our future, balanced on the knife edge of choice. I opened my eyes. "We cannot bind them," I said softly. "They are here to remind us, not to save us." Armand studied me for a long moment. Then he closed the leather case on the table. "Very well. Let us hear what they choose."
Part 8. The Departure. Silence after the song. Midnight came, the hour no bell dared mark, the moment between prayers and dreams, when heaven itself seemed to hold its breath. I stood alone in the observation deck. The glass walls shimmered faintly, not from light, but from something older, something leaving. One by one they rose, Nemeris brushing the last line of an equation she would never finish, Brannick folding one final star, his hands steady, his face serene, Gabriel closing his book with a whisper of pages as though sealing away the memory of all that had passed. No words, only Raphael's hum, soft at first, then swelling, a harmony of farewells older than sorrow. The cells brightened, not with fire, not with judgment, but with light so gentle it hurt to look upon. Wings unfurled, unseen yet undeniable, and then they were gone. No doors opened, no walls broke, no chains fell, only silence, a silence so complete it felt alive. When morning came, the cells were empty. No equations on the floor, no paper stars, no hum threading through the air, only stillness and the faint imprint of what had been. I wrote my final report with shaking hands, not for the Vatican, not for history, but for myself. They were never prisoners. They chose exile until we were ready, and when they left, the world felt quieter. Years have passed. I've left the Vatican. I live among ordinary people now. Yet some nights, when the wind carries no sound, I still feel it, a hum deep in my bones, as if someone somewhere still remembers. Where did they go? Heaven? Hell? Somewhere beyond both? I do not know. Perhaps we were never meant to. But I wonder if they are watching still, waiting for the day humanity proves it has learned to rise without them. And I wonder if I will hear the song again when that day finally comes.